Okay. Good morning, everyone. The Ranter is back to go into yet another diatribe of the news of the day. And since I have a tendency to go rambling in my rants, with the multiple topics that I try to go into, like in one sitting, it turns out that the larger the file that I make out of this, the harder it is to actually get this uploaded anywhere, including YouTube. So I'm going to attempt, again, to limit myself. And I'm going to go with like maybe one topic per video, so I make this down into a more bite-sized portion as to the wandering flow of consciousness that I normally do, and have these pregnant pauses in between. So I think just start with the elephant in the room that with the mask on, including myself, and talk about the updates of the coronavirus. As of 11 p.m. last night, according to the Reuters graphic, which is also following the coronavirus, at least 1,213,747 cases of the virus has been reported in the United States and its territories. And the tragic thing, of course, is that at least 71,130 people have died of the illnesses across the United States, and the largest number of it being in New York. It is one of those things where people try to come up and express the facts, being neither good news nor bad news, but the facts. And what you make out of them can be the good news or bad news, because they can tell you, well, this, and this, and lay it out as coherently and articulate as possible. And you can take the information and you can go from there. But since the jump through all this is that we've had misinformation, people jumping the gun, people downplaying the seriousness of this, waving things off as it, is not as bad as it seems. We'll go into that in probably another video on this. Well, we'll definitely go into that in another video. But for now, I just want to get into, our state of being as it stands. It is difficult to articulate the importance of the information that's given to you. Now, sources like me or so forth, we're not really sources. I mean, at best, we're regurgitating what we've seen other people have said, what the experts have said, and we try to relay that out. Sometimes with the smack of politics involved in it, or sometimes we're trying to refrain from doing that. But otherwise, no matter who you see online, if you're not wearing a white coat and you don't have the credentials, you don't have the experience that backs up your words, don't try to project yourself to being a source. I mean, I am pretty much venting my own opinion into the void, going on by the words of experts. But it is not me educating you on anything. It's just sort of relaying what has already been said and just trying to articulate it in another step. COVID-19 is extremely serious. Common sense stuff, at least as we said from the beginning, does help the likelihood of you catching it or not catching it, and how you can ride out the symptoms and so forth. But there's still a whole lot that we do not know about it. And I think it is kind of problematic from the standpoint of both politics and even the media that when they keep weighing in on this, they are they're slowing down the progress of us finding out what's going on. If you got scientists and doctors working in a lab to try to figure out what's going on, then you drag them from their lab, drag them out of their white coats to put on three-piece suits in order to show up in front of your camera every day to pretty much tell you the same old thing because they're too busy trying to placate the narrative as opposed to actually getting into the work involved, then yeah, your progress gets slowed down. Mixed signaling slows things down. You know, is one thing to be reassuring. Is another thing is to blow smoke off people's asses for the sake of whatever motivation you have involving politics, or or just reassuring the business sector or your special interest involved in this. I go into work every day. I'm still, you know, they labeled my work, which is simply being a grunt soldier, grunt worker in a grocery store. They consider that essential. Uh, I appreciate that. I go in every day with masks and gloves, extra spare gloves to change out of after a break. Work to provide people food for their families in my county in Virginia. Dealing with people who come in, the majority of them wear masks. The majority of them have some form of gloves. Some people just put their nose in their shirts, or they throw a jacket around their face, or they cover their hands in plastic bags. And they're just trying to go from their day to day, as limited as it is, and still have the things that they need to continue on. I mean, I understand that for people, this this isolation does get a little stir crazy, and the inability to do those non-essential things and have the freedom to do these non-essential things is stressful. But I don't know if that frustration equals what the alternative would be. When we were first starting to take this seriously, in terms of people in the administration, the experts, when they started doing this task force stuff, their estimate of the deaths in coronavirus would have been somewhere around 240,000. We started, it was slowly implemented state by state that they were starting to shut things down into everything but non-essential, everything non-essential and only essential stuff like grocery stores and obviously hospitals, medical facilities, and so forth, whatever was deemed essential. We had put up curfews, so travel was also kind of monitored, and people stayed home unless they were going out again places that were essential, like grocery stores and so forth. And when that was done and that was maintained, at least a month worth of that, then the estimations that, let's say, Dr. Fauci came out with say that we dropped down from 240,000 to 60,000, which is an interesting and good drop by times a factor of 4. But the thing about estimations is that it's an estimation. It's theory. It's this is what we guesstimate is what we're going to be. Well, we're past that now. I think we did significantly cut down with our precautions from the large number to the smaller number. But also, since nothing is static, we our actions, or at least some of us, our actions who are protesting this and getting together, doing the little congregations, especially in the churches, and those defiantly going out to the beaches, so forth. They made the petri dish wider again, so more people started to suffer from this when they didn't necessarily need to. There's a story that I put up that was pertaining to a town in Tennessee that it was a small town in Tennessee. Let me see if I can quickly find this without this being jumping around on us. Trousdale, Tennessee. That was the location of this. Trousdale, Tennessee, with a population of 11,000. In a space of a week, went from 27 cases of COVID-19 to 1,344 cases. And they plan to reopen businesses within a week. This is going to lead into the second portion of this, which will be in the second video. But at least for a little trailer about that. Stuff like this is ridiculous, at least to me. When you have something that serious that goes from 27 cases to 1,300 cases in a week, and the powers within that state decides, well, we're just going to reopen anyway. The bulk of the cases, at least in this one, from what I understand, is those who are in prison, and they got the cases, and the personnel got the cases. Now, someone callous could go and say, well, they're in the prison, so it doesn't much matter. We can still reopen. Yeah, well, that's great. But the people who are also in that prison, who are the prison guards and the prison officials, well, they go home. And since this COVID-19 can be passed while it's asymptomatic, they could have gone home multiple times, infected multiple people without ever knowing about it, no fault of their own, and the people that they come in contact with who got contracted can pass it along with no fault of their own either. In March, the state of Tennessee didn't want to tell the count of people who were infected by it or were killed by it, by coronavirus, by COVID-19. They wanted to withhold the locations in Tennessee or where people contracted it and where they died from it. So when I hear that and I hear this, and I wonder what the fuck is going on in the minds of those in Tennessee, what is the sacrifice that they are throwing and conning the concept of reopening their economy? It just boggles my mind of how important it is for them to get back to business, for their non-essential businesses, at the expense of what is obviously in front of them. Do we want to get back to business? Absolutely. But let's go back into business safely, obviously, slowly, obviously, and with an eye towards us doing so because we see the numbers going down. And the thing is that the numbers doesn't really go down. We have seen the evidence of, like, in New York, where, yeah, the numbers are starting to slowly tick down. But this thing doesn't just exist in New York. It doesn't exist in the concept of borders. So where it ticks down there, it ticks up elsewhere, or it stays the same level. Which means same amount of cases per day, same amount of deaths per day. With no vaccine, no real understanding of what's going on, and reopening, may as well be reopening the petri dish to expose more people unnecessarily. Was the shutdowns a temporary measure? Absolutely, but it was temporary till we figured out what was going on. Like, let's paraphrase Trump in when he wanted to talk about a Muslim ban, where he wanted to ban Muslims from coming into this country until we find out what the hell is going on. Remember that? Well, how does that not translate to us keeping ourselves shut down except for essential services until we find out what the hell is going on? Because we are not finding out what the hell is going on. All we're seeing is cases. In a matter of months since we started this, when we started seriously looking at this, from the end of February to the beginning of March, we've gone from a handful of cases and less of a handful of deaths to over 1 million cases and over 70,000 deaths. And we have no idea what was going on. Alright, this is the first bite-sized portion of this, but there'll be more to come because we're going to segue out of what's going on with the coronavirus, and we're going to move on to the topic of the protest against staying at home and being safe because of freedom, and the people who are waving their guns, because obviously you can't possibly protest without wearing tactical gear and a bulletproof vest and waving a gun because you want to go to the hairdressers. So the ranter will be back. For me, probably a few minutes. For you, maybe hours, depending on when I put this up. Good morning. Talk to you later.